Hello, today we're going to be working on this Matchbox 1968 Chevrolet C-10. I'm probably going to put it in the junkyard diorama, and I want to build some ladder racks for it. But before we get started, let's take a look at last week's project. We did this 1977 Ford, I guess it's an F-250 now since we did an adjustment on the stance, and we built this homemade camper trailer in the last video, and we also dealt with these two donor cars. The wheels from the Toyota ended up on the Ford, and the wheels from the Jeep ended up on the Toyota, and I have to say they look pretty good on there. But back to the project at hand. Let's start working on our 1968 Chevrolet C-10. When I was a kid, my grandpa drove one like this, almost the same color, every day at the place where he worked. It was called Queen City Awning. He hung awnings for a living. So I'm going to try to mix up a color that was close to the one I remember him driving when I was a kid. Let's get it taken apart and get started. All we need right now is the body. I'm going to try to paint around these details in the front because I don't want to lose any of that. And we're going to put some rust on it and make it look weathered. Oh, there's some details in the back I'd like to keep, possibly. Be hard to paint around that. We'll see how it goes. Let's start by mixing up some paint. I'll put these pieces to the side. I'll probably keep the same wheels because I like those. At some point we will paint the interior. I want to say the interior was probably brown in the truck that they were driving back then, if I remember correctly. Or it could have been green interior. Now that I think about it, it's very possible that it was green. I can probably look it up on Google and find out. I think I'm going to use this apple barrel new shamrock green for the base, and then we'll start adjusting it to get it closer to the color that I looked up on. Alright. I usually start with too much. Let's see if that happens today. Okay, I want to add some satin apple barrel white. Let's mix this up and see what ballpark we are in. Alright, let me study on my next move, but I like where we're at so far. For studying the picture of the color, I'm going to put a dab of this coffee bean brown gloss just to give it a little bit of a sheen and try to change the color slightly. Let's see where that pushes it. I think that's getting us closer, but I need a little bit more of that brown. Wow, I think we're getting close to the color. Let me study on it a little. It still needs to be darker. Let me put a little bit of this burnt umber in there. It's a slightly different shade of brown. See what that does. Alright, let me check it against the color that I looked up. I think we're really close now. Alright, now it needs to be more vibrant. Let me try a little bit more of this shamrock green. See what happens. Let me check it against the color again. I think it needs more shamrock. I think it needs just a little dab of blue. Let's see if that works. Okay, now I think I'm getting closer. Let me cross-reference it. I think I'm getting real close now. After studying on it for a few minutes, I don't think there's any reason to mess with it anymore. It's close enough to the color. I'll put the color up on the screen so you can see for yourself. I think it's pretty close. we'll go ahead and paint the vehicle next. Before I start painting, I'm going to take this real fine wire brush and go over the body and degloss it a little bit, and then also hit it with a liquid deglosser. I'm going to do that next. I'll spend a few minutes on it, and then we'll come back. I'm finished with the wire brush. Today I'm going to use some of this sanding deglosser. I'm just going to pour a little bit out in the cap and then wash it with a Q-tip and then rinse it with an alcohol wash. I also take the wire brush and go over the interior just to put some micro scratches on it, and that will also help the paint bond. Spend a few minutes doing that, or maybe not even that, just a minute. Now's a good time to go ahead and paint the interior brown while the body's drying. This will take several coats. I'm just putting a primer coat of brown on the dashboard at the moment, but the dashboard and the door panels will probably be the same color as the body. Take our custom made up color and start painting the interior and body. I like to start on the inside because I usually encapsulate the whole truck. That just helps the paint bond better, like a coat of armor. Unfortunately, it would be nearly impossible for me to paint around this Chevrolet insignia on the tailgate, so we're just going to paint over it. And if I accidentally paint over the taillights, I'll just paint them back in later. Alright, we'll let that dry. It's going to take a few coats. While we're waiting for the paint to dry on the cab, we'll go ahead and paint the chassis black. Alright, I'm finished with the chassis. We'll let that dry. Alright, I got all the coats I needed for the seat and the bed. I'm waiting for the dashboard to dry. I'm going to make the dashboard the same color as the body. That part's almost done. I've got all the coats on the body. Now we can start the weathering process. Alright, I'm going to add some gray first for some gray accent. I really don't know how much rust we're going to add. I don't want it to look like a complete pile of junk, but it definitely should have some gray showing through. And I'm going to do a gray patch on each door to try to make it look like there used to be a logo that's covered up. Go around the edges of the wheel wells. that's it for now. We'll let this dry. Some spots will probably need another coat. The first gray wash is dry. I do think it needs another coat around the edges and definitely on the doors where I want it to look like a logo's been possibly marked out. I want to set it on the side so I can work on the door. If you try to work on the door when it's laying flat, it just runs off. So I'll work on the sides like this. All right. I think back here should definitely have more. I want a good portion in the center of that door. Now I'll let that dry. The passenger side gray is about dry. I still think it might need another coat, but I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing here to the driver's side, especially the door. All right, we'll let that dry. Okay, the driver's side is dry. Passenger side's dry. I'm probably going to do another coat of gray on the roof, maybe add a little bit more to the hood. But I think I'm going to go ahead and put it together and start weathering the bed and add a little bit of rust. I'm not going to rust a lot on the outside, but I am going to rust the inside of the bed and the edges on top. But yeah, I still want it to look like a usable truck, so I think we've gone almost far enough with the gray. But let's work on the bed next. What I do on the gray is not going to be a whole lot, probably just a second coat on the roof and hood. For this, I'm going to use a watered down version of chestnut, which is a apple barrel color. And I want to hit the top of the bed, because they're usually all beat up for sure. And then all the corners. Inside the bed. And then just probably a basic wash over the whole floor. We'll let that dry and then I'll come back and darken it up. I'll go ahead and do our extra wash on the roof now while waiting for the bed to dry. And a little bit on the hood. I think that's it. I added just a little bit more to the front of the hood. I thought it needed that. Okay, the body is almost dry. I took some matchsticks and started cutting them out. These two long pieces are going to be the top of the ladder racks. And these three vertical pieces here, this would be the front portion of the rack. This one here would be the back portion of the rack. If you were looking from the top down, those would be the pieces at the top of the rack. And then I got these four pieces here all cut for the length. This will be the legs to support the rack. I'll glue all those pieces together and it'll fit in the back of the truck, and I'll paint this black and we'll have a ladder rack. I'm just going to use this all-purpose glue, extra strength, to glue it together. You can use any type of wood glue. What I have here works great. I'm going to use this square to make sure all my pieces are put together square. So I'll put one here and one here, and then I'll glue it, and then I'll let it dry, and then I'll have a perfect square piece. I'm just going to go ahead and dab a little bit of glue on this end and stick these two together and make sure they're square. I use a waxy type paper for my surface to work on, so when I glue things like this, they don't get stuck to the table so easy. Doesn't take much, and it bonds really good. Alright, I got a perfect square corner there. I'll do the same thing with the other piece, except I'll do it the opposite way. I'll make one like this next, and I'll let these two pieces dry, and then I'll slide them together. Now would be a good time to put a rust wash on the front bumper, since I'm waiting for the ladder racks to dry. I'll just just let that sit and dry. Okay, our ladder rack gets one more cross member for the top. I'm going to drop that in now. I got a little dot where I think it belongs. Alright, it's going to go right there. I think that looks pretty square. I'm going to go with it. Okay, now I'm going to glue the legs of the ladder rack on, the vertical pieces. Just another dab of glue, and same thing with the square. And I just use the square to get it aligned, and I'll let it dry that way. Alright, here we are at the test fitting stage. I just need to add the 2 more legs in the back, and I think we'll have it. I like how it's fitting. I don't see nothing that needs to be changed, so I'll add those 2 legs and then paint it. Alright, I'm just waiting for it to dry, then it can be painted. Alright, everything is dry. Here it is sitting in the truck. I'm going to go ahead and paint it black. I think it'll look a lot better with black and a little bit of rust on it. I'm going to do that next. And I'm going to be using the gloss apple barrel black for our paint. Here it is with the racks inside. I'm pretty well pleased with it. I think I might add a little bit of rust to the vehicle, not a lot, just on the top of the door and on the edge of the hood. One other thing I'd like to change is the ladders and stuff. Everything would fit on here fine, but there probably should be some kind of side rail or something to keep them from falling off. So I started to draw out a piece here with the angle on it. That will be the front of the racks. I'm going to make 2 pieces shaped like that, and then I'm going to glue those on the side, and I'll paint that black. And that'll have a little ledge on each side to help hold ladders or lumber or whatever I decide to put on top. So I'm going to cut that piece out, make 2 of those, glue them on next, paint it black, do that little bit of weathering, and then I think I'll be finished. I'm going to do that next. Okay, that's the little piece after I got it cut out. I want to make one more just like that. I'm going to do that. Alright, now that I have the 2 pieces cut out, I'm going to go ahead and glue them onto the frame here. Okay, I'm just going to put one here and one on the other side, like that. That'll give us some little ledge to hold lumber and ladders on. I'll make sure they're lined up straight, and I'll just let that dry and then paint it black. Perfect. Yeah, that's gonna work out. It looks like a regular ladder rack you could put lumber on, or ladders. And this way, if I tilt it to the side, they won't just topple off so easily. And it looks more realistic too. Most ladder racks have some kind of shape like that to them in the front. A lot of them do. Now I want to add just a little bit of rust to the vehicle, a little bit more, just on the top of the door and on the edge of this hood. I'm using this Tuscan red for my first coat. And that's maybe a little bit on the roof, but I'm not going to go crazy with it. We'll let that dry, and then we'll add some other color next. Next, I'm going to enhance the little bit of rust that we added. I want to go over the red that we used with some of this chestnut. And that's it. I don't want to do a lot. That's it. Next, I'm going to paint this black and then glue it in there. I went around with the artist brush and did some more detail work. I painted the door handles in, the gas cap, windshield wipers, and did some black around the panels. Make it look more realistic. I still got to do the turning lights on the bed and the front fenders. And I still need to glue the ladder rack in. And I think that's about it. I'm waiting for some stuff to dry. I'm going to go ahead and put one final wash of burnt umber over some of this rust just across the hood and by the edges of the top of the door panels. And that should be it for the rusting of the truck. I'm going to do that right now. Just a little bit. Alright, that's it. I'm going to go over the edges of the ladder racks with this burnt umber, because they would be rusty, especially on top from sliding ladders and stuff on. Put a little bit of that on, and on the edges. I'll let that set up and then I'll glue it in there. Go ahead and paint the reflector in. And then the front fender light. Okay. Well, now that it's about finished, it really does remind me of the truck that my grandfather drove at work. I'm going to go ahead and do the final assembly, get the windows put in it, glue the ladder racks in, then I'll move it over to the junkyard diorama and we'll get some footage. I'll have to look for this casting again. I think it would have been cool if we could have made this a four-wheel drive, but the one that inspired this was just a two-wheel drive. So when I get another one, I want to do the same color in a four-wheel drive. I think that would look really cool. Definitely. I already found some wheels. I thought about making this a four-wheel drive, but to keep it true to what inspired it, I'm just going to leave it this way. Alright, let's glue the rack in. Alright, that's going to work out good. I got some more of these pieces of cardboard that kind of look like 1x12s or something. I'm going to stack some of those on the roof. And I have a couple more ladders. So that's going to look pretty good. Let's take it over to the diorama. Well, I guess this about sums up our 1968 Chevrolet work truck with ladder racks, like the one my grandfather had. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And if you're able, go ahead and hit that hype button. That seems to make a big difference. Thanks for watching and have a great day.
Well, hello everybody. That was a fun ride, wasn't it?